Hello everyone, I'm Grant with the Player's Aid, and today I've been at WBC for a couple of days. I'm running on about 5 hours of sleep today and 2 very long games. But I'm sitting here with Fritz Bronner. Fritz is a designer who has taken an older game from the 70s and 80s that then went into a digital game called Liftoff, and this is called Liftoff 2.0.
Right.
So this product is going to go to Kickstarter, you thought, by the end of the year.
That's what we're hoping.
So by the end of 2024. But it's a very cool looking Cold War space race style of game.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So Fritz, tell us a little bit about Liftoff 2.0.
2.0. It's a growth from the original game I did back at 89 with Task Force Games.
Okay.
And then it became a computer game. Buzz Aldrin's Race into Space.
Yep.
So the mechanics were very solid as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And
that was a very popular game.
Absolutely, both were, yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talk like in your Twitter feed, oh, I played that to death when I was, you know.
Oh, they're still playing it.
Yeah, right.
Well, we had somebody today who saw the sign, didn't know there was an update. And it was screaming in the room.
Sure, nice. But that's one thing I really like about classic games from our yesteryear, right? 89 doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's 40 years ago, almost.
Yeah, almost, yeah.
But those things make a connection to a moment in time that we remember playing and having a good time. So go ahead, keep talking about it, sorry.
Well, yeah, and then interestingly, when it came out, it was on the 20th anniversary of the moon landing when it came out in 89. And yet, currently at that time, there wasn't much going except for shuttle. And now we're really in an exciting time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've got a new race coming. We've got multiple ways of going into space. We've got the Chinese.
Yep.
And
they're private corporations now.
And private corporations as
people
well.
that are doing this to make money, delivering satellites, developing rocket technology to then do. But it is an exciting time. I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
no, we really are. And this game initially starts, the classic game, we're following it first, and it's the Cold War. Starts in '56 and goes all the way up to the moon landing. You have the U.S. and the Soviets still, and then we have upgraded to where we have China, and we have a Europa kind of conglomerate going on.
Like a European Confederation space.
Right. And what's nice is this is a little bit of For All Mankind, where they had a lot of alternative hardware brought in. So this has a lot of proposed hardware, especially by the military. They had von Braun wanted to do direct descent to the moon. He wanted to build the Nova rocket, which was even bigger than the Saturn V. It rivals the Starlink we have today by Elon Musk, and it would have gone directly to the moon and landed back.
Okay.
You can develop that in this game. We have 35 different ways you can land on the moon.
Okay.
So there's a historical route, and it's probably, in most circumstances, the logical way to go, but this is a crisis resource management technology game.
Okay.
So it's a sandbox sim, and we have short games, micro games, where you can just do the race for first orbital satellite.
Okay.
You can get to the first man in space or orbital, and you can do spacewalk. You have a midpoint game. You can play 1 to 4 players.
Okay.
We have strong solitaire where you can play against history, and we have
I want to talk a little bit more about that because I know a lot of people, solitaire is a big thing, right? They have either difficulty finding opponents or they just want to play in their home. But I want to make sure we come back to that and get a little more detail on that. But so there's 1 to 4 player mode, and I'm assuming 2 players, it's opposed, right? It's probably the United States versus the Soviet Union.
Well, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I must admit that. What's really cool is now we really have all the accurate hardware for each faction.
Got it.
So we have Vostok, Voskhod, Soyuz. We have even the different type of LEMs they were developing.
Yeah. And
we have the alternative, and we added like half-stage rockets, like the Redstone rocket, which was not in the earlier game. So, and then we have. Actually, we may be able to get in the Saturn 1B along with the Saturn and things like that. And the Europeans, we found a lot of interesting information from the early British aerospace design and the space program that they were trying to do in the early 60s.
Okay.
So Project Pyramid, I mean, it's just any historian out there or any people who are into history and looking at aircraft development, spacecraft development. We've got a lot of neat stuff in it.
Sure. Well, the other interesting thing I would ask, and when this was designed in the 80s, right? There wasn't a lot of declassified information
That's
about
right.
exactly what the Soviets were building, or even what the United States or others were building. How has that changed kind of your approach to the 2.0 version?
Oh, that's a great question, because originally I did go to the Soviet embassy.
Okay.
And it was big, giant metal doors that had a
Keep
click.
out.
No, you go in, and then it's like this 14-foot all-metal door that goes
Okay.
click. And I was asking for all their space information in the 80s, in the late 80s, and they kept correcting me. I said, yeah, your space stuff, maybe to the moon. They go, space peace proposals. And they kept correcting me, and they gave me some books, and it was some good
Propaganda.
stuff. But Glasnost was really
Sure.
great.
Open and more willing to share.
And even now, still, I am getting stuff from folks that are just wonderful researchers that are just peer review articles or research. There's been a lot of new books that have come out too that are kind of in the academic level, but it's really explained a lot of the Soviet stuff. That's very exciting, so we've been able to incorporate that. So this is a classical game, and this is all symmetrical, but we're also going to have the historical U.S. versus Soviet, so they're going to have their strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, nice. So there is some asymmetry there.
Absolutely asymmetrical as far as that.
That's probably the way I would prefer to play, right? The real historical look, but that's cool that you have some other options.
And we have other factions like the U.S. Air Force. They actually had a program, and it's been recently declassified in the last 20 years. It was called Project Lunix.
Okay.
And this was a military manned expedition to the moon.
Okay.
And it was going to be completed. They were going to land in 67, and by 1970 have bases. And the playbook was amazing, and it details it. We have all that hardware available in the game, including Blue Gemini, which is a military-type Gemini spacecraft. And it's a fantastic program. And NASA ended up using their playbook because when I basically created the civilian NASA Space Force, the Air Force disgruntledly kind of has said, here, you might want this.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful program, and they actually had a mini shuttle that was going to take off, direct descent, and then land directly on the moon, and then come back and land at a runway.
Okay.
So very, very neat as far as that goes.
So real quick, the map looks cool, right? There's a lot going on. You mentioned that it's a crisis management, resource management. How does that work in the game? How do the cards work with the game as well? That's maybe two different questions.
Yeah, it is, as far as that. You start with nothing. You start in 1956, and you're going to develop programs, and you have prestige, which was everybody was trying, and there's low fruit, trying to get the first satellite up, first man in space, things like that.
Yep.
And you're going to purchase programs and start developing them by R&Ding it, which is representing teams of contractors that you're going to have, and you can have up to 5 contractor teams, which are 1d6s.
Okay.
But they all cost money, and more advanced programs cost more money as far as that goes.
Got it.
So if you look at, like, this is a one-man capsule. So this has a program cost.
Go ahead, if you don't mind, just kind of hold it.
This is a Daedalus for the Europeans, and it's a conjecture one-man spacecraft going into space. And this has a 18 megabucks price for program, and then it has a unit cost after you purchase it. And you get one of these, and you get a tracking counter, and you have this bubble chart, and we move it up as far as every turn you get a chance to R&D it. There's event cards, and this is all based on real data. There we go here.
Yeah. So this is a 2-man capsule. That's a 1-man. So do these kind of evolve into this?
They do, and there's a tech tree bonus on it.
Okay.
And they have sort of.
And you have a mini shuttle here.
Yes, and that's the Pyramid mini shuttle.
Okay.
Which is pretty unique and interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So they
40
sort of
megabucks.
They sort of have their obsolescence at a certain point. A one-man capsule.
Yep.
It has a limited duration for how long you can be in space, and so it means you really can only do something in orbit and do a duration on that, and sort of test that, and then from that you get that technology. If you get it above a certain level, you want to develop it and move it on to the next type of spacecraft, and move it on and move it on, and so there's initial starting factor, and then there's a maximum R&D you can do with your teams of scientists, and then there's, by experience, you can push it to a higher threshold. by actually running the missions.
Okay.
And it's by success or failure. As long as it does operate, even on a failed roll,
Yep.
it still goes up 1%. So
Okay.
you learn by failure.
Yeah.
And
well,
likewise,
that's the way it really works, right?
it really does work that way. So when you have a lot of programs you can develop on the ground, but there's significant things you cannot do on the ground. You have to run these space missions. For example, you cannot replicate docking unless you're in orbit. You cannot get close-up photo reconnaissance of safe landing sites unless you're on the moon here. And it's called photomagnetic reconnaissance because there's perturbations around the moon with different anomalies of magnetic as far as influencing the orbits, and they sort of wobble around. And so you're going to do this by satellite flybys or manned missions going around. So it's very, very important to increase that. Another is LEM tests. We need to do our LEM tests like we did Apollo 9 in Earth orbit and Apollo 10. And the Soviets did 3 unmanned Earth orbital LEM tests, and they were all successful. So that was a fully operational ready spacecraft to go on the moon as far as its burn. And durations. So you want to build up your experience, and you want to be able to get prestige to impress your funding, to get it up further, so you can develop bigger programs.
Bigger project.
And the crisis part I want to get to, the challenge, is I have to assess what you're doing in your progress and when you are going to be ready, because all we do is declare missions, and we secretly write, and this is an example of a given card, we will write down in secret what our missions are. So all you know is I have a launch, and it's going to start in May, but you don't know what I'm doing. And then when we get up to the event, then we secretly write down how many months are we rushing, and that costs money. And because you're shortening your time to launch, you -2 prestige.
Okay.
So per month, so you can rush up to 3 months.
Wow.
And you are taking risks though, and it costs you more money.
Right.
We disclose that, then we determine proper launch order, and that comes out. So you can bluff me though too.
Right.
Because I still don't know the mission, or it could be a different mission, and you can just cancel your mission and scrub it.
Okay.
And you take a loss for that, but I may
prestige.
Yeah, and I may have moved up 3 months because I thought you're going against me.
And your prestige is your victory points, basically, right?
Well, your prestige is your funding the next turn too.
Okay.
So that's critical. So when you have a catastrophic failure, when you kill somebody on a mission,
you lose money the next year.
You lose money, and your reliability goes back all the way down to its initial safety.
Oh wow.
And that really happened, with Apollo 1, Soyuz 1. And it takes 18 to 24 months to recover that program, maybe a little longer. So this is a game, you're going to have rockets blow up, you're going to have failures, and you have to learn to overcome, and you have to be just on that edge of risk and conservatism. And sometimes it's better.
Kind of push your luck. I'm going to go for it, hoping I succeed, but I might fail. Okay.
And this is what's very, very unique in this. So we have all this statistical data on rockets, and we've built this upon, of how things should work. For example, the Proton rocket the Soviets had was one of the most reliable, and of course, the A7, their Soyuz rocket, which has launched hundreds of launches, and has a very high success rate, much like Falcon 9 does. And nothing's 100%. Nothing ever can be 100%. You can get up to 98, 98,
there's
99%.
Always a chance of...
But there's always going to be a chance. And of course, there's steps if you skip. We have strategic mission order. So if we skip a step, there's die modifiers.
-4%.
Negative.
It says.
So when you're running a mission and you have a failure sequence on it, it depends on the hardware that's operating.
Okay.
So it could be the capsule. It could be the rocket at launch. So let's say we're going to the moon and we're in en route activity, and it's kind of like, well, they're doing their whole routine check. They might even do a cryogenic stir and just make sure everything's working, and they fail that roll. Well, first off, you've got the astronauts on board, thank goodness, and they have skills, and they have a saving throw with their skills as far as that goes. So from that, if they fail, if they succeed, they avoided it. If they failed, then you go to the doomsday book. The failure mode chart analysis.
Nice.
So then each one of these is marked, these bubble steps, like a real mission control tracking as far as where the steps are, goes to a step, and this tells you on the way what went wrong and where and how bad it is. Like, for example, this is an unplanned EVA, and there was a failure on it as far as that goes, and these are unplanned. So this is going to tell you what went wrong and how bad is it, and there are mission control go or no-go decisions for you as director.
Okay.
So you're sweating on this because you know I'm going to launch, and I launched, and I just fried one of my astronauts, or
Well, then you're going to lose prestige. You're going to lose funding.
Yeah,
and
you saw it happen.
Effect.
Now you're like, I don't want that to happen to me.
Yeah,
I want to be really cagey, and I want to have my best crew, and I want to get through this. And this tells you the really gritty, and it gives you an incredible, vivid narrative of what happened on this mission and how you avoided it. Sometimes it's a impact that will affect you on a later step in the mission. Sometimes you may just say, with the go, no go, we're scrubbing, we're bringing these guys home. You know, because it was just too close. And because of the problems, because there's sub roles if you say go, and it will ramifications will increase as far as that goes. So,
talk about how the cards work with. Are those card? Is it like a card-driven mechanic in some ways?
No, it's more an event card.
More an event card.
And a budget and
I want to ask about espionage too. So remind me.
Oh yeah.
And I'm assuming those are events, maybe.
Yes, there are.
Because you got to have that in a Cold War. Oh, there you go. Espionage.
Here's an espionage card.
A U-2 spy plane, basically, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. It could represent a spy in a country, and they steal technology.
Yep.
So you can select a program and steal a technology that might help your own program as far as that goes. So the event cards, in the original game, there were just 40 cards, and that was more back then because of printing costs and things like that. This is going to have 4 decks of at least 40 cards per deck. So there's a 1956 era deck, and then in 59 you get more cards shuffle in, and in 62 and in 65, and it varies on how many players. If you're playing solo, it's 20, 30, 35, 40 for the number of players we do, and so you're not even going to see all the cards from multiple plays. And then there'll be extra cards too. So this represents there are impact cards and river cards. But
let me show one to him while you're kind of talking about it. That's just an example there.
So on the bottom, there are budget increases. So there's ranges depending where your budget. And this represents the fickleness of, in the U.S., your congressman and saying, we're going to increase your budget. And then sometimes it goes down a little bit. And then you get event cards, and sometimes you get little cash increases. So you track your budget and your cash, and as you spend your cash, it depletes, and then in the spring, you get a new budget. There's 2 turns, spring and fall. But you're trying, by accomplishment, you can increase your budget more. And that's definitely, you want to be successful as a space person that way.
But the concept of the multiple decks and the 160 cards, basically, there's a lot of replayability because you're not going to see all those cards. How many of those event cards do you think you're actually going to see in a game?
You probably will see 100. Maybe.
So about 60%.
And when they come, because the later decks, they're pertinent sort of to the Cold War time as far as that goes, and more advanced programs, because by then you should be at a certain point. And we have extra cards, of course. So we're hoping with stretch goals and everything, we can make
have
it
more.
Maybe 200 cards.
Nice.
Well,
I think replayability is a good thing, particularly in a game that has a solo mode. Go ahead and talk about the solo mode. How does that work specifically?
Well, the mechanics are exactly the same, so there's no compromise on this. You actually do the same as your strategy, what you'd be doing in the regular game, and you can play just by yourself and I just want to get through this and do all these tasks and reach the moon and bring it back. Or you can play, we'll have a chart of the historical of just the U.S. and you want to compete against the U.S., or a combined U.S. and Soviet accomplishment. So let's say first satellite, which was the Soviets, October 57, and they beat you. That means you're not going to get first prestige because when you did your accomplishment, you came in second. So you're going to keep trying to go through, and of course you're going to try to land on the moon with this combo by July 69. Now the other way, and this is even all the way, this is up to 4 robot players. And there's so 1 to 4.
So you can choose to be the U.S. and then
you can play against these other robot players. And you score their results here as far as their accomplishments, so you can check it. So every time you complete something, you'll check and you'll roll over. You'll even know how they're going to be picking their path to the moon. So they have a lot of different ways, and they may decide they're going to go 2-man capsule to the moon.
Okay.
Totally different. And it may be a surprise. And there are also checklists for the robot players to see how the human player is doing. So there's a little bit of a feedback loop here. And then for the final moon mission for the robot players, and let's say they beat you, as far as it looks like, you run their mission just like you would run one of yours. And if they have a problem, in this, it has the rules for how to scrub it, or if they have a catastrophic failure, how they're going to rebuild their program to an alternative program, how fast they can get back in, and it's statistically based that way. So and also there are rescue rules too, and there are rescue rules in the regular game too. So if I'm stranded in orbit, I have a first chance because it's my capsule to rescue it.
But someone else can, for better prestige, or
and everybody gets a chance to do it.
Okay, interesting.
And there's no catastrophic failure on a rescue because it's a good Samaritan kind of rule.
Okay.
So even if you died trying to rescue me, there's no catastrophic failure, and you'll automatically get prestige for doing that.
Nice. That's
I'll get negative for failing my mission.
Right. You failed your mission.
But it's very, very exciting. It's right out of I don't know if you remember the movie Maroon, where they had this rescue mission. It's an old movie, and they're trying to get this launch up with David Jansen. He's the astronaut, and Gregory Peck is the mission director. And they finally launched it up. It's this experimental rescue vehicle, and the Americans in an Apollo-like capsule with Gene Hackman. It's worth it. Just watch the last 15 minutes. Marooned, and just watch it's a soap opera in the middle. Yeah, don't watch the middle. Watch the last 15 minutes. And they're all screaming, go, go, go.
Oh, nice.
And this has a flavor. We even have in in one of the books, the dialogue, how we should, if you want, how we can all speak about going through the missions. Roger, go flight, go for OID.
Yeah, like a specific narrative and word uses. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one final question, and then we're going to go ahead and I'll give you a few final moments.
Sure.
The complexity of the bot on a scale of, say, 1 to 10, 1 being very easy, 10 being very hard, how would you say using that bot is? Is it a learned experience? Is it
for the solitaire?
Yeah, for the solitaire bot specifically.
As far as difficulty for the human player to play against?
For someone to play it.
If you're playing the easy one, I think you've got probably a 60, and you know the game well, I think you've got a 65, 70% chance of beating it. So you want to probably be on the second tier, the second difficulty.
A little harder.
It's a little tougher. Now you're at a 50-50, and then it's a 40%, and then maybe against the U.S., because we won the game, really. So it's probably you have a 30% chance. And if you're good, and that's going to be very, very challenging.
So different levels, difficulty.
Of difficulty, if you want to use that, absolutely.
So what kind of an experience do you feel like the game creates for the player? Not just the solo mode, but the game itself.
Overall, I think you feel like you've been in a movie, and you've had this rich narrative, and you've had the ups and downs. This is an emotional game. This is one of the more emotional games you can ever play. You're going to have deep despair when you've lost a crew.
Elation.
And then you're going to be
succeed.
like, finally, and you may have leapfrogged in front of people. The game is finally balanced. You're going to have somebody who looks like, they get the first satellite, first man in space, maybe 2-man, and you're slowly working away if you're planning an alternative way to get there. And suddenly you start doing some lunar pass with satellites, and you get some prestige there. And suddenly you pop up from nowhere and you do the first spacewalk, and maybe you do dockings from that as well. So you can get back, and they have a little bit of a kerfuffle trip as far as that goes. And they have a little bit of setback, or their budget is, because I stole their technology, or their technology been lowered because they were using false technology. As far as that, it wasn't as good as they thought. Under stress and everything. So it's very, very balanced. And even then, if you're behind, if you really want to take a risk at the end of the game, you can do it. And I've seen people launch with extremely risky hardware and get through. But the reason is too, now this game it's not just lucky die rolls. There are cards that give you a fortuitous accident card that you foresee a problem on one of the steps, or specifically to a piece of hardware. And then the astronaut saving throws, because you can send astronauts to advanced training and improve their skills. So you're role-playing them as well. And it's one of the unique games. The astronauts are really an important, critical part of the game. They're not just out there. Some games you just go, they flew and they landed on the moon, and that's it. This is a unique feature too.
It holds your cards. And
well, it's also a store and play. So this has storage in it, and you just pull out what you need for the game.
So this
and
pulls out.
Pulls out, and there's sleeves in there that's going to be.
I'll show you real quick just kind of what that looks like. Oh, that's kind of nice.
And the bubble
This
tracking.
is a prototype, obviously.
Yeah, this is a prototype. The bubble chart for tracking all your hardware. This is a, you can pull this guy aside.
Let me go ahead and just show. That's what he's talking about, the bubble chart. And you have your rockets and your different tech that you're kind of moving along.
Right. You're going to have counters for each type of hardware, and they're going to move up. So you're going to be running 18 projects here, but it's really easy just to take a glance.
And track
what's
and
doing
see.
well, what's not, how do I fix it? And it's everybody loves this from the old, and they're so excited about this. This is one of the big improvements as far as that.
Cool.
And having more hardware, having more event cards, and more options. And that's what they like, because it just brings, every time you play the game, you're going to have
different.
It's going to be very different. You're going to have a little obstacle, and you're going to have to adjust, adapt, and react, and come up with a different strategy.
Got it.
And that's what real space exploration is. As it gives you the engineer sort of idea of well, we have to come over this in a different way. We're going to have to just approach this a different way. So very educational too.
Sure.
It's still played in schools too.
Oh, nice.
The original game, yeah.
That's the great thing about any historical game, or any game that purports to be a simulation of some kind. You're going to learn. You're going to learn what they went through, what they had, what they didn't have. And that's why this kind of thing is very, very interesting. So one final question I have for you. Any idea on the price of the Kickstarter? Obviously, we're months away.
Yeah.
Is this like an $80 game? $100 game?
I think it's going to be because of all the components.
Yep, there's a lot of cards.
It's a big game. There's a lot of pieces to it.
A lot of rule books and
we've got a lot
charts
of books. Well, it's not a big rule book. It's mostly reference. This this is going to help you
mission checklist.
Understand how to run the missions and what bubbles to go to.
Yep. And this is like an example of play.
This is different game. Those are different scenarios.
Oh, okay.
These are all the different game scenarios.
Okay.
And this offers strategy tips.
Okay. I didn't mean to vacuum.
Oh, no.
I just know sometimes people want to know $60, $80, $100.
Yeah, I think,
and then what the value is.
I think, the retail, I think, will be in excess of $100.
Okay.
I do. And this is a hardware book. So this explains, if you don't understand all the hardware in the space or what's available, this has a description of what it does, how it operates, what are the strengths and weaknesses. There's even like a strategy tips as far as it goes.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So I have here notes and strategy notes, how to use it. So here's a reference here. So this covers all the hardware.
Sure.
And then this is more sort of drama as far as what gives you the colors, and as far as the failure mode chart.
Okay.
So they're really just reference books, and then we have a rule book as far as that goes.
Sure. Well, it's good. This has some design notes, some strategy, and that's important.
Yeah, we have a Q&A in there because there's probably a lot of common, frequently asked questions.
Right, I saw that, the answer. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I think the big thing also about a game that is a little more in-depth and complex, it's good to help people understand how to play it.
Right, and we're gonna do video playthroughs as well.
Good.
So that'll help. Definitely coming. I just want to finish the artwork. Right. So it looks a little bit more like the prototype, to the real version.
Well, I do I think the general feel that you've got here is very throwback to the 50s, 60s, and I think that's important. So, I think this game looks very interesting. I've not played a lot of space games. High Frontier is one that I have played. That seemed really, really, really crunchy and involved. This one is maybe a step back from that, but it looks very interesting.
It definitely is. And we have a lot of expansions. I mean, if you look at this board, it runs off to an edge, so
or you can do another board.
This is Tech 1, and we also sort of can raise it to the current race, so you'll be able to play this board exactly with another bonus of having Falcon 9s and modern and Artemis and everything else. We'll bring the Soviets back in and the Chinese in here, and it has Tech 3 technology or Tech 4 technology. So we have other factions. We'll have India, Japan.
Okay, nice.
I've kind
Lots
of
of options.
I've spec'd it out already.
Oh, good.
So that's why I redialed all the data so that it's all ready to go to these other levels.
Okay.
So
sounds fantastic. So Fritz Bronner, right?
Yep.
Liftoff 2.0. Look for this on Kickstarter probably over the next 4 to 6 months.
Yep.
the time of the video we shot this is late July, so 4 to 6 months in the future, but definitely an intriguing and interesting looking space race, Cold War style game. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm sorry it took me a while to get with you, but I'm definitely glad that I got a look at it and I'm able to share it with our viewers. So,
fantastic. Well, we appreciate it, Grant.
Oh, no problem.
We really do.
I've been Grant for the Player's Aid with Fritz, and thanks for watching. Really appreciate it.